Hey, everybody. This is James McNeel, Managing Director at City Theater. Welcome to CT Live. This is our online edition of City Theater, and we're just absolutely thrilled for everybody who's decided to join us here on this Friday at 1 o'clock. Something we're going to be trying out to continue to talk to our audiences, talk to everybody out there in the world while our stages are dark. And Marc, hello. How are you?
Hey there, I'm Marc Masterson. I'm artistic director, and we've been working hard behind the scenes to try to generate some interesting things for people to watch over the coming months. And we're going to unveil some of that today and talk about the future of City Theater and what the last few crazy weeks have been like in our building, and also just recognizing that there are a lot of people, everyone really has been affected by this. So shout out to all of the people who are keeping us safe right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And Marc, I mean, this has sort of become our new normal a little bit. I feel like I'm actually seeing and talking to you more than I did when our offices were about 10 feet apart
Yeah.
from each other. So everybody, I want to welcome you to my attic at our house. This is very much the new normal. I believe at least that there are opportunities for anyone that wants to ask any questions or make any comments, and please just add that in, and our handy producing team of Claire and Nikki will relay that onto us. Full disclosure, we have no idea what we're doing, but we're going to kind of wing this as best we can, and sort of really just try to have a conversation about this truly surreal moment. So please do participate. Don't leave us out here all by ourselves, because God knows where we might go. Um, and as mentioned earlier, I mean, we're going to try to do this every Friday around lunchtime. Hopefully this is a good time for this conversation. It's where we're going to roll out new content, and we'll talk a little bit more about what that content is in just a little bit. But Marc, I thought maybe you and I could have a little discussion to start, really to talk about these last 2 weeks. And I was relaying earlier with our graphic design partners at Landisberg, who were just so great, and talking to them and just recapping the word absurdity comes to mind, but perhaps that's not the right one, of what we've gone through and what our field's gone through, what our society has gone through. But from your lens, you want to sort of recap life at City Theater over the last couple of weeks?
Well, I think we went from some level of denial to really fast action in the course of one day.
Mm-hmm.
And it changed. I mean, you know the day that I'm talking about, because we were scheduled for another week and a half of the run of Cry It Out, which, by the way, we're going to talk, that's going to be part of what we're going to be offering here through our City Theater website and Facebook page. But that day, the situation changed 4 times,
Mm-hmm.
and we went from thinking we could finish the run to thinking we might have to close a little bit early, to thinking that it was going to be Saturday, and then realizing by the end of the day that it had to be tonight. And already on that performance day, the audiences were dwindling. People were afraid, and we didn't want to be. We wanted to be responsible about how we engaged with the community. So I think we were probably the first organization in Pittsburgh to cease live performances. So in a very short period of time, we arranged for a 3-camera video shoot of Cry It Out. For the final performance, we had about 100 people in the theater. So it was a live performance, and the audience and the actors got to feel that. And I think you can feel that on the recorded version of the play. I think the play comes through very nicely, but we did that without knowing that we would be able to share it. And we took some risks in putting it together. Fortunately, it all worked out. I think we're really proud of the content, and it's exciting to watch, and it's a good way to see what theater can do, even in a recorded medium. And so that was the first step on that Thursday.
Yeah, and I think it was. I mean, yeah, I think it was a Thursday that morning when I came into your office around 9 a.m. and we were sort of talking about different scenarios. You were in rehearsal, of course, for another show, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And sporadically through that day, I would sort of catch you on a break or shoot you a text message and simply say, I think maybe we need to adjust, and we'd convene and do that. I do want to take a moment and thank Mickey and Molly Miller with Human Habits, who've been our longtime videographers. They capture all of our B-roll that we use in our various video promotion. Terrific human beings, and just were so generous. I think they were scheduled to come that night to actually just see the show. And Nikki, our marketing director, reached out to them saying, well, maybe you could bring your cameras along with you, and all changed very quickly. So they did put that together, and they donated their time to us to allow us to have that video, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And as you mentioned, we did capture that night, and we didn't really know if we were ever going to be able to share it, but I do want to acknowledge our union partners, SDC, with the directors, USA, with the designers and Actors Equity, obviously the actor and stage manager union, who really bended on this and quickly around what are pretty strict negotiated terms about sharing content. And they've been very flexible around that, which is great. So that was sort of the first day, and we closed the show that night, Marc, with Cry It Out, and it was heartbreaking on a whole new level. But so the next few days, I mean, you continued on with rehearsals for a few days with Perk Up by Isaac Gomez, and let's talk about that experience.
Yeah, it was because I knew that it was unlikely that we would get to live performance on that Thursday, and that was day 3 of rehearsal.
Yeah.
But we decided to just push ahead. And initially the goal was to get it through a tech rehearsal with lights and sound and then do another video recording of that show. But when we got the not the cease and desist, the ruling from the city that people were not allowed to go to work the next day, it became clear that we couldn't do a costume fitting, for example, and maintain 6 feet distance from each other. And so it was unsafe to proceed with that plan, and we had no option but to close the show. This, of course, was happening all over the country, and artists and their projects were being shelved all of a sudden. And I'll just give you some insight into how this affected Isaac Gomez, the playwright of Perk Up, who had 3 world premieres happening at the same time, and all of them within the space of about 4 days closed. And so it was this cascading effect. And for him, what that meant was 6 years of work were down the tubes. I mean, he could not, it was heartbreaking to see. That's a lot of work. That's a lot of heart and soul. That is an extraordinary effort that is just lost. And no one knows when those plays will be revived or get their second chances or whatever. So it had a real impact on him, not only financially, but kind of spiritually as well, I think. And that's the thing that, this is obviously a serious public health crisis, and we're concerned first and foremost about the well-being of our staff and of our artists and of our audiences. But there's also a part of it that is not measurable, in terms of how many people are infected, or, whatever the numbers are that we're using to track this tragedy. It also is measured in terms of, the loss is measured in terms of creative output and opportunity. And artists everywhere right now, all over the world, are struggling with the idea of what is an audience. And what does it mean if, for an art form, especially like ours, which is based on the ability to gather in a public space and share an event, to tell a story, to understand something in common space with other people. And that is what's been taken away by this pandemic. So we have made a decision to still maintain our community in whatever way we can through this kind of medium and through others, where we can continue our creative output for the artists that are involved, continue to create community, even though it's an online community. It's not something that we can sit next to each other in the theater and do. But for now, this is what we have. And so art will continue. What's changed is the livelihoods of these artists and their ability to do what it is that they are good at and what they're trained to do. A huge volume of creative output has been lost.
And I think what we're seeing, of course, is the adaptability of artists and how quickly, what we're doing at City Theater, but countless other organizations, how quickly we can sort of try to adapt and get our content out, get our stories out. But with Isaac's play, with Perk Up, I mean, it is a story that it was a City Theater play, right? I mean, it really was about real world, serious topics told in a really artful way that were important, and sort of that loss is beyond the data. It really is a loss, a little bit of our culture's soul, and anecdotally, of course, I mean, for these artists, that were here, I mean, they were planning for the next 7 weeks beyond that date to be doing the show, to be in rehearsals, and then running it 40 times in the Hamburg studio, and practically overnight, that came to a screeching halt. I mean, one of the performers, they not from Pittsburgh, and their apartment in New York was sublet. So what do? I mean, just those stories across the board.
Yeah, that actor actually, what happened is he didn't have any place to go when the show was closed, and we paid out, the contract, by our union agreement, and we tried to do the best that we could for the artists involved and for all of our staff under the circumstances. But he had nowhere to go. He was living in a studio apartment in a city that he didn't really know anyone.
Yeah.
It was scary to him, and so he ended up deciding to go to Louisiana to visit his mother. Mm-hmm. And ended up in the second, now I think maybe the greatest hotspot for this disease, and he's sheltering in place there. But it's just had a huge impact on so many people.
Mm-hmm. And of course, for us at City Theater, the timing of when we stopped with Perk Up was also, as you mentioned, when the orders came down that we had to close our offices. And of course, at that point, our staff, I think mentally been preparing for it. Folks were starting to take work home with them, but we had one day to sort of shut down the offices. And since then, we're working from our attic spaces or our dining room tables or wherever it might be. So,
but I'll just give a shout out to Brad, who, when we decided to do an audio book recording of Perk Up, mm-hmm. Our sound engineer, Brad, put together a remote sound studio in about 10 hours with all of the chairs and the microphones 6 feet apart, in a circle where everybody could see each other, and the cast immediately shifted to a different kind of performance to record it as an audio play. Mm-hmm. And it's spectacular. They did a fantastic job, but all of this stuff was done so rapidly and without any real knowledge of how it was going to turn out or how it would be shared or if it could be shared. It's just the spirit of all of the staff, all of the theater makers who work in City Theater. It's so inspirational to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I absolutely. And a little teaser, we're scheduling that to be released on April 7th, I believe, which will be sort of the radio version of the podcast version of Perk Up with the cast. And I sat in during the recording. It's extraordinary. And at that same time, as I think you mentioned, we also did a recording with the artists, which will be released as part of our City Speaks podcast, talking really, that Claire Drobot, our associate artistic director, hosts, talking about, doing contemporary theater in the midst of a global pandemic, which was really the experience for those artists. Before we sort of jump into some of the content, Marc, I mean, I think, we've talked a lot about this, this particular crisis is unique, right? I mean, we've all had lost performances because of bad weather for a few days here and there, or, God forbid, the events around 9/11, which were seismic, but relatively geographic. And then things were actually up and running very quickly in New York after that, in fact. And then, of course, the Great Recession of 2008 into 2009. And I think all of us in the arts sector, the cultural sector, really are starting to realize this is both of those things combined, perhaps times 10. I mean, it's national. We don't know when it's going to end. But, I know, Marc, when, for example, 9/11, you had just left City Theater, if I remember, and gone to your new job at that point at Actors Theater of Louisville. You want to talk a little bit about that time of crisis and what it was like trying to come out from that moment?
Well, I mean, so I programmed a season in Louisville, Kentucky, and I wanted to be adventurous and come out strong. And my first choice was a play called Floyd Collins, which is a musical by Adam Gettle about a cave explorer who got trapped under a pile of rocks. And it became the world's first real media circus around, I forget, like 1911, I think, or sometime in that time frame. And so it was a local story because it took place down the road from Louisville, Kentucky. Yeah. And it was a spectacular production, and we were very proud of it. But it was scheduled to open 4 days after 9/11, and doing a play about a guy who's dying underneath a pile of rocks in 4 days after September 11th was something that was unforeseenly, it was unforeseen, and what a bad idea that was. There was no way to know. And so while the events were far away from us geographically, it affected everyone, and the mindset of the audience shifted. And one of the things I wonder about is, when this is over, and it will pass, you know, how will we be different? How will we be changed by that? How will the events that we've all shared shape and affect the way we engage with each other, and the way that we think about our values and what's important, and the culture that we live in? And I believe very strongly in our spirit and our positive nature and our ability to rebound. But I do think it's really interesting to contemplate how things will be different eventually.
I agree. My first day of working at the National Endowment for the Arts on September 11th was September 11th, and that subsequent period of time in Washington D.C. and that sort of epicenter of what do we do in the arts and how important our cultural organizations are. We're gonna need to lean on all of our organizations again during this time. But the colossal scale of loss at this point, both nationally, but here in Pittsburgh, the numbers we're hearing are huge. And so, in advance, I just want to thank all of our donors and our patrons for sticking with us. We will come out of this whenever given permission to start performing again, and we can ramp back up. We will certainly be doing that, and it's going to take support from all levels of our government and our funding sectors to really do that. But most importantly, we want to make sure we're doing these stories for our audiences as we move forward. A couple other things I wanted to talk a little bit about, but I saw there was a comment here, Marc, and it was, I think it's a really important one. Obviously, everything's sort of shut down at the moment. Our income has stopped coming in, and as for every arts organization in this country. And there are things that are being put into place from the legislation that I think will be hopefully voted on later today out of Congress. But I think the comment was, how do we find ways to support the artists during this time, and what can people do? And I wonder if you have any sort of comments beyond just City Theater, but the artists sort of writ large in our society.
In a way, this gets back to what we were speaking about with Isaac Gomez, because there's two ways that artists are supported. One is just sort of by doing their work and giving voice to the creative spirit and finding opportunities for people to express themselves through a collaborative group experience and creativity. That will continue eventually, and we will get back to that. But the other is economic. And, there's so many sectors of our culture right now that are affected by this. Unemployment rates are at an all-time high. I think they're going to go higher. Our own staff, all of us have been, financially impacted by this, but the artists in particular are vulnerable, and they're freelancers, so they have no income, and their ability to qualify for unemployment is even different than the rest of the culture. So it matters a great deal how these things are talked about in these rescue packages. I saw online today that, for example, I think actors and other freelance theater artists may be covered by this legislation, but playwrights are not.
Yeah.
And so there are these carve-outs and different ways that it affects artists. And it's the institutions like City Theater, larger and smaller than we are, that offer the direct financial support to the artists of the American theater. And so I think we have to double down on our commitment to our artists. We have to recognize that they're in a vulnerable place. We have to direct our resources, what we have, to them in this time of need. We have to look out for each other. We need to offer creative opportunities, yes, but most importantly, we need to get back to being able to provide the financial support that they depend on to make their livelihoods.
Yeah, I think that's right. And it is just such a unique moment I saw the same unemployment charts that I think we all saw in the last 24 hours, and over 3 million claims, and dwarfed the last time, we were in an economic crisis, after the 08-09 downturn in the economy, and it's just been dwarfed by that. And it is in so many different sectors, and absolutely impacting organizations across our city and across the country and our
state. To that point, James, there was just a comment that came in on our feed about there are a lot of artists that are creating content and streaming live and doing things, but they're volunteering.
Yeah.
They're doing it out. That's the other part that I was speaking of. That's the creative spirit, where that will go on in some form, but eventually it will diminish if there's not financial resources to support the artist making that work. So yes, it's inspiring to see people getting out and doing things and being creative and putting online content out there like we are, and we're trying to figure out how to monetize all of that in this new world that we're in. But ultimately, both things matter.
I think that's right. So let's talk about some of that content. And one of our artists who was in Santaland Diaries last year, Schwab Potter, of course, he's got a wonderful feed, and I really encourage people to check out that work. And of course, our colleague Patrick Jordan at Bare Bones has been. I think you were on talking to Patrick last night, Marc. Really, and I really do encourage you to get out there and check out all the offerings that are going on amongst all the local and national organizations. But let's talk a little bit about what City Theater has. And I hope many folks saw, we had a wonderful gesture from Benjamin Scheuer, who wrote and starred in The Lion at City Theater. I think that was in the spring of 2016, a terrific show. And he saw the news about City Theater and some of the challenges we're having, in terms of the shutdown. And he immediately reached out from Wales and said, I want to send you all a video. And he recorded a special rendition of Shelter from the Storm, Weather the Storm, not Bob Dylan, Weather the Storm, and shared that with us. Of course, Cry It Out, which we talked about, which is a play you've known for a long time. Molly Smith Metzler gave us permission to run that along with the unions. And people are signing up for that. I think we sold over 200 tickets beyond our subscribers who got it as part of their subscription, if you will. So, just for a second, you want to tease Cry It Out in that show, just encourage people to sign up. And we're doing our Pick Your Price initiative around that. It starts at $10. But that show is really special to you, Marc, as I know you've known Molly for a lot of years.
Well, yeah, I commissioned the play when I was at Actors Theater of Louisville, and then her delivery of the draft was interrupted because she had a baby. Mm-hmm. And then, that was ironic because she was writing a play about having a baby and what it meant to go back to work or have difficult decisions to make about your life going forward. And so I was unable to produce it when I was at Actors Theater of Louisville, but I did re-engage with her, and she and I produced a number of her plays over the years. She's a very dear friend. I have a huge amount of love and respect for her. And I'm just thrilled that we were able to do this play. And, it's the last live performance that we had on our stage, and it's still available through April 4th, 5th, 6th. I'm sorry. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think it's on, it's 5th. And so I really encourage people to watch it. It's great. You get the full impact of the live performance, except that you're not sitting next to someone. So it's something you can do that supports the arts, that's creative. You can use your imagination. And so that's available now. We have Benjamin's song that's up on our website and on our Facebook page. That's the best way, by the way, for people to engage with us, is to go to either our website or our Facebook page. Just like us on Facebook. We'll send you updates as our content rolls out. We're going to try to put out fresh content twice a week. We also recorded a podcast of the cast on the final day of rehearsal and performance for Per Cup. And it was a really interesting insight into what it meant to a bunch of artists to have their process interrupted by this in this moment in time, and their perspectives on that and how they came together and rallied around the opportunity to make something different than we'd all set out to do. And then we did an audio recording, which is a lot like an Audible book. Mm-hmm. It's got sound effects. It's got, it's made with a listening audience in mind of Per Cup. That'll be rolled out. What's the date, James?
April 7th, I think.
April 7th. So that's coming up. We have podcasts with other community partners that are part of this. We're trying to build our community, keep our community together in whatever ways we can through our digital content.
I'm thinking that's a great point. I mean, one of our obviously community engagement through our City Connects initiative is critical to who we are, and we really do believe in putting our plays out there into the community, and to really bring with it a sense of let's change the world for the better. Sitting here on my desk, I just want to, we're one of our books, White Fragility by Robin DiAngelo. It's been postponed currently. We're going to bring it back hopefully in the fall, but one of our partnerships that was scheduled in April with Carnegie Libraries and Pittsburgh Arts and Lectures was to have Robin DiAngelo come to Pittsburgh. But if you're looking for some reading and want to sort of get some of the world of what was around Isaac's play, and I think the experience of that, we really do encourage that. The work of equity has to continue forth during all this time, of course. One of the things, of course, that would be most useful for City Theater, as we mentioned, obviously, Cry It Out, we canceled the show with about 11 performances to go. And what's been very hard for us is that was our subscription renewal play for next season. We had announced our 46th season just a couple weeks earlier. It's an extraordinary group of plays that Marc and Claire and the team had put together for next year. And we were actually running ahead in subscription renewals before we had to stop. Of course, that's a big issue for us because of our cash situation around that. But you can help, and we really do encourage folks that are current subscribers, or if you've not been a subscriber to City Theater, one of the things you can do for us right now that would be so important and helpful is to go ahead and subscribe. You can go to the website, you can renew, there's instructions. If you're currently a subscriber, you're getting emails about this, but please do go ahead and renew or subscribe for next season. We really could use that right now and that commitment from all of you. And so I feel like that would be great. The other show I should mention, which there will be content, we're going to tease it out, of course, is our final show of the year, which is Fuck Seventh Grade, Jill Sobule and Liza Berkemeyer's world premiere, and that's just been postponed. We're going to, whenever given permission, we're going to do that show when the authorities say we can, and so please do keep an eye out for that. But I think that's everything, at this point, as we're approaching 1:30, I just want to thank those that have tuned in from your couches or wherever you are as we shelter in place around here, and just say thank you. And thank you for believing in City Theater and for what we do. I want to thank Nikki and Claire for teaching us how to do this and get it out into the world as from our remote locations. And to all the artists at City Theater and the staff at City Theater, just thank you for all the work we do. We're going to be back and we're going to get out of this and we're going to be producing terrific contemporary theater again here in Pittsburgh before you know it. Marc, any final words for the?
Yeah, in the meantime, every Friday at 1 o'clock, we'll be live on Facebook, and we'll be generating content twice a week from now in the immediate future, well into May. We have a whole schedule of exciting things lined up, and we're looking forward to sharing them with our audience. And we're going to stay together during this, and we thank everyone for their support, and we encourage you to subscribe, buy tickets to our online events, or donate. It's a good time to support the arts in America.
Absolutely. So thank you all.
Thank you.